Welcome to Built to Win, the podcast to help elevate your business game to the next level by developing a success mindset that's made for the long run. In this episode, Leading Through the Tough Times, you'll hear from Jeff Olson, Deborah Hayes, Amber Olson-Rourke, and Dave Fleming about how their historic battle tested them as leaders and as individuals, but ultimately taught them what matters most in business and in life.
Welcome back to the Built to Win podcast. Really excited to be recording this episode. We spent the last few episodes talking about our fight with the FTC, which is something that was pretty significant to all of us and pretty significant, really unprecedented in our business area. So very few people have had the opportunity to go through something as big and as difficult and significant as we had. And although we had the dubious pleasure of going through it together, in many ways, we all had our own individual journeys. Jeff and I got to talk a lot about that last episode, but I think it's important to share some of the stories of how it impacted us individually, how we prepared to get through a challenge like that in our life, and what we did to thrive in spite of it. Because everyone faces challenges in their life, not always this big, but everybody faces something. And eventually something comes along that's going to make you want to quit. And how do you prepare for that? How do you get through that? I think our listeners can learn a lot from our individual stories. So I want to start with Amber. She is our Chief Sales and Marketing Officer here, but she is also the leader of our brand. And as the leader of our brand, she's the person that people look to for inspiration, direction. When times of crisis, they look to her for comfort. You know, she really is the person who is out there dealing in the front lines with everybody else's emotions that are tied up in this case, and also everybody else's emotions, no matter what crisis our company is going through. So, Amber, you've really been an inspiration to me, watching how you went through this journey, watching how you went through this difficult time. So, Amber, welcome back to the Built to Win podcast. Excited to have you on today.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
So for a long time, we knew this was going on internally. You know, we were dealing with this crisis as a management team, but we'd really been able to keep it self-contained so that the rest of the world didn't know what was going on. But when we decided to sue the FTC, it was really bringing out to the world that we were in this fight. Suddenly, everyone knew. I know this was impactful to all of us, but as the leader of our brand, how did this impact you?
So great question. And I think, this applies to our situation, but applies to really anything hard that you're needing to lead through, that you're needing to communicate about. And it really starts with yourself. And as you mentioned, as a leader, people are going to look to you for your reactions. So you kind of have to get yourself right first. And, truthfully going into this, when we got to that point where, for a long time, we always joked that a grown-up was going to show up and then they would look at the actual facts of what was going on and this would go away. So for a long time, we were really thinking this was going to stay contained. And I think that time where we switched and really saw that no matter what the data said, no matter what facts we provided, that they had one goal, which is to force us to take incomes away from people that were, hardworking, that had built this, that were our friends in many cases, that their families' livelihood was at stake, that was just something that was non-negotiable to us. So in some ways it made it easier because of the line in the sand that they drew, that was so against our core values as humans, as individuals, and as a company, that we knew what we were doing and going forth and standing our ground and saying, we will not move on this because we are right and because the facts are on our side, the law's on our side. You're not going to make us do this. And so starting with that orientation of what is the core values that you started, whatever it is that you're leading, a business, a nonprofit, anything that you started it because you had something important to say. You started it because you wanted to make a certain impact in the world. And for us, our mission statement was make people better. And those were 3 words that we've had since the beginning of this company. And so as long as we could look at ourselves in the mirror and say the choice we're making is in alignment with that, how we've run this company is in alignment with that, how we've made every decision is in alignment with our 10 core values, it made it easier to step into that. Now, I will be honest that, that moment when we made that transition, I knew this was going to be super public, right? And it was going to be in the media. It was going to be everywhere. It was a scary moment. I think, it was a lot to process and think about, because no matter what level of leadership you get to, I think there's always a core human part of you that are worried about what other people would think. What would our employees think, right? As a business owner, as a business leader, we're responsible for hundreds of people's families that work for us. What would our field leaders and our brand partners think? We're responsible for tens of thousands of them. And so what would my friends think? What would, just in general, what people think? And so moving past that into, regardless of what people think, I know that I'm doing the right thing. I know we're in integrity, and I know that we are fighting for what we believe in. And so, it was all going to work out in the end. And so the only way through is through. You can't avoid hard things. You have to walk through them. And so as the leader of the communication, for me, it was getting myself right, becoming oriented to the why we existed and why we continue to be who we said we were going to be, and being able to create communication that aligned with that, and having a really clear plan of action, the message we were going to share with our employees, the message we were going to share with the press, the message we were going to share with brand partners. And I think being vulnerable and really just fully transparent in that message really served us well. You can't pretend hard things aren't happening, because then people kind of are thinking, what's really going on there? You kind of have to hit it head on. Be transparent, be vulnerable, be open, and always tie your direction back to why your company exists, the impact you're trying to make, and why you what you're here to say to the world as a company.
Well, I know that really, your leadership really served us well. And I think it served, the people that we touch, our employees, our brand partners, our independent people that are affiliated with us. I think your leadership really set the tone. And I like that transparency aspect, that vulnerable aspect. I think that's something that a lot of people miss in a crisis. They start thinking about, oh, I need to control the message. You do need to have a good plan for the message, but you also need to have truth in it. You need to be transparent. People are going to be able to see through if what you're really, if what you're trying to do is cover up or minimize something. People knew this was a big deal. They knew it was a huge thing. And I have to commend you on your ability to communicate with large groups of people that didn't have to stay, but they did. And you did such a tremendous job with that. One of the things I want to ask you, because I had the unique privilege of being able to tell you about the ruling. I was connected to digitally at the moment that the ruling came out. You were not. And I got to call you, and I just wanted to talk to you about how you felt. What was your immediate reaction? And what was the ongoing reaction? Because I think we're still going through this still. We're still having reactions. What was your ongoing reaction when you heard about the ruling?
Yes. So I want to tell just a quick story of that day. I was supposed to be going to Toronto to do an event for Neora, and I just woke up that day and I felt something different. And I kind of had that feeling prior. I had been talking about communication plans. I had been emailing all the other executives the night before. And mind you, we'd been waiting at this point like 10 plus months. So, and I just had the plan of what's going to happen when we get the ruling, and here's who needs to do what. And so for whatever reason, I just felt like it was going to happen. I woke up and looked to check into my flight, and the number was 1111. My flight number was 1111. And it was one of those kind of God wink moments where I just knew, all right, this is going to be the day. And so I screenshotted it and I sent it to one of our leaders that was going to be traveling with me. I live in Dallas. She lives in Kentucky. When she opened it to read my message, it was 11:11 in Kentucky, and she screenshotted it and sent that back to me. And so I got in the shower and was like, okay, this is really going to happen. I got out of the shower and I looked at my phone and I had a million missed text messages. And so in that moment, and the first one I saw was, "We won it all." And that moment was, just, I can't put it into words of how emotional it was for me, because I felt this freedom and this weight, this freedom that I hadn't felt in 7 years, this weight that I hadn't lifted, that had been on my shoulders, our shoulders for so long, because walking through something like that, you're in the right, and I always never wavered from the belief that that would be the outcome, but still you're so responsible. The weight is on your shoulders as a leader for everyone you lead and their livelihoods and their future career and all of these things. So I just started bawling, crying for a really long time. I cried on the phone with Deb. I called my husband. He started crying, right? This was something, when you run a business, it's not contained to just you. It's everyone in your family. It's everyone that, is around you. And so just feeling that was something I will never, ever forget. And I definitely felt, God's hand throughout that day and throughout the whole experience, really. And so one thing that, as I processed it, I realized is, as an entrepreneur, as you go out and try and do something yourself and do something big, it requires you to learn to hold that weight and not let it consume your entire life. And I really realized that once the weight was gone, because there was, I have a lot of other things that are really important into my life. And I learned just the necessity as a leader to be able to hold weight. And it doesn't have to look like what our weight is, but there's going to be weight on your shoulders as a leader, and you've got to learn how to hold it and not let it consume you.
Well, I know when this fight started, I had 3 children already, and you've had 3 children since the fight started. So clearly the fight wasn't the only priority in your life. I remember the day, that we got the news. It was highly emotional, and it felt like this huge weight was lifted. But I also think, in a certain sense, that for me anyway, you don't feel like you're carrying the weight the whole time, because it can't consume your life. What did you
Right.
do to keep it from consuming your life? Because obviously family is really important to all of us. And there are other things in our life, and you just can't sit around and obsess about a challenge this big. So what'd you do to keep that in perspective?
For me, it's all about, intentional priorities. And, my husband, Damon, and I think that's one of the things that we do really well, is having great conversations about what we intentionally want for our family, the things that are important to us, the people that are important to us. And so it's keeping focus on those things that are kind of anchor you, make you who you are, family, friendships, of course, faith, those things that are core components. So if everything blows up with your business, those things remain, right? And belief in yourself, because, no matter what happens, you have to believe that you can walk through it. And I think that's one of the things I really realized through this. So I think just making sure to stay focused on the people and the priorities and the core foundation of who I was, that anchored me to be able to just continue, moving forward and being focused on the impact that I want to make. And that was another part of it, is being really clear on, why do I exist? What do I want to say in this life? What do I want to impact? Do I want to make? And how can I continue to make that? I'm not going to wait until this hard thing's over to start making that impact. I want to be an example in the hard. I want to be an example for other people to see that they can also be empowered to walk through hard, because, that is something that I really is core to me, is inspiring and empowering women to be able to walk through hard things, do hard things, and flourish. And so this gave me an opportunity to lead by example. So knowing the impact I wanted to make just in this life, and being able to still do that and not wait till it's over to do that. So it's still being fulfilled in my calling throughout the journey.
I love that. I love the intentional priorities element of that, because I think we all talk about we need to get our priorities straight, but do we really take the time and effort to look at what's important to us, not just today, but long term? I know for me, it shows up a little differently. I really focus on presence. And what I mean by that is, I have a million things to do, and I have a million things that I need to get done, but I make sure I schedule time for my priorities, and I'm present in that time. I don't leave it to chance. So I make sure that I have time intentionally to spend with my friends, the people who lift me up, my family, my church, what I need to do to make sure that I have the time on my calendar. And then when I'm there, I really focus on being present for that time. I I have children that play sports. When I go to their sporting events, I watch the sporting event. I don't spend the time on my phone answering emails, which seems like a small thing, but it's not to them, because if they score or if something good happens, they look up and see what you're doing. It's really important. The same thing's true at the office. When you're in a meeting, put your phone down, don't text the whole time. These are simple things to do, but they're so critical to maintaining presence in the activity you've committed yourself to do. And so for me, that's how I handle my intentional priorities. But I've watched you and Damon do it for a long time, and I just think it's phenomenal that you spend your time and effort doing that, because it really shows up in how you present yourself in your life. So you've been an inspiration to all of us through all of this. Thank you for sharing a little bit of that. I know we're going to talk a lot more about life philosophy on this podcast. We're going to talk a lot more about things you can do to be prepared for these sort of challenges that you're going to go through, what you can do when they come up. And we got many, many episodes to cover that, but I really think it was important to anchor in what we've already been through. And I want to transition to Dave. Dave Fleming, he joined our team, as we talked about last episode, in the middle of this fight. And I think a lot of people wanted to know if he was crazy because they knew about the fight. I had a similar experience working here. Being a leader in the company, I still had people asking me, why did you stay? Why are you still there when you have this FTC fight? And, my answer was, well, because we're right and we need to win. And I believe we're going to win. And that ruling, that crying on the phone with you, Amber, is just that relief, that vindication we all felt when the ruling actually came out was worth it. But even through the journey, I stayed because I knew we were right. I stayed because I was doing something important in the world, something that would live well past me. Dave joined midstream in the same way, but he joined and he really had, with his years of experience, I think 25 plus years of experience right now in our industry, he walked in the door and really his responsibility immediately came filling a gap, helping us lead the company while the rest of us were leading through the crisis. Not that we weren't working on the company, but we needed someone to keep focused on IT work, on strategic planning, on what we were doing. And Dave, I want to ask you, how did you prepare yourself, or how did life prepare you to walk into a situation like that and have the tremendous success that you had?
That's a great question. And I think first and foremost, I think you have to understand that this is truly unprecedented. So I don't know if there's anything that can truly prepare anybody, any kind of experience, unless you've gone through this, but literally no one has gone through this experience with this outcome. So from that perspective, there was nothing that I had been through that prepared me for that. But that being said, I think that the years of experience, and I can't believe it's been 25, but it's actually 25 years in the business this year, a lot of stuff happens and a lot of experiences happen throughout those years that give you lessons, insights, things that you pick up on if you're willing to. And I think that's the key thing, is that you have to be willing to learn from what's gone on in the past. And one of the things, I had an experience, kind of a pivotal experience earlier in my career, where there was a massive project we were working on. It was like we were trying to get a license so we could do business in a country. And it took a ton of resources, took a ton of time. And it was all encompassing. It was all we could focus on. And when it finally came through, when it finally happened, what I realized is that we'd spent so much time, so many resources preparing for the moment when that came through for us, that we spent almost no time, not enough resources on the next chapter. What does it look like after the fact? And so that was one of those things that I came into this experience. And none of us knew for sure what the outcome would be. But I, in deciding to come here, in talking to you, talking to Jeff, talking to Amber, and the way that you spoke about this challenge, about the FTC, about what was going on, I knew that regardless of the outcome, it was not going to be catastrophic. A number of different things could have happened. No one really predicted that we would win in the manner that we won, just complete victory in every aspect of the case. Knowing that, and knowing that there are a lot of potential different variabilities of the outcome, that this group, and we talk about being built to win, we were going to continue. We were going to build. We were we are built to win beyond whatever happened. And so regardless of the outcome, I knew that there was life after the decision, no matter what form that took. And so we needed to prepare for that. And so in the day-to-day part of building the business, you have to compartmentalize to some degree and say, okay, this is happening. This is reality. And I love what Amber said, like you take it head on. Like you can't really sidestep that, because this is a major, major thing and major event that, again, no one else has come through. But you have to kind of set that aside a little bit, because the business still has to go on. And you have to help the employees here and the people that we work with focus on the day-to-day part of the business and really making that the best that it can possibly be, because there is life after the FTC decision. And fortunately, it came out exceptionally well for us. Could not have been better for us, for the company. And we put ourselves in a really great position by preparing for life after the decision, by going through that stuff and doing the things that had to be done from managing the business on a day-to-day level.
Yeah, I think that is exactly what you did exceptionally well, was keep us on track for life after the decision, no matter what it was. I think that was critical to leading a team internally. But I do want to ask you another question, which something I really admired about the way you came in the door. We have a lot of our employees have been here for a really long time, 10 years or more, or 8 years or more. The core of our group has been here for a really long time. And it's difficult to enter that kind of an environment where you're surrounded by people who have really weathered fire together, and you're new, and we're asking you to lead and keep things on track. So what you did exceptionally well to me was you came in as part of the team right from the start. What is it that, how do you approach new experiences? How did you approach that new management challenge that allowed you to really immediately come in and be well respected and start leading from day one? I just really admired the way that you did that.
That's a great question, Deb. I think number one is when you join a team, any team, whether it's new or whether you've been on the team for a long time, is understanding that the team is always bigger than any individual. And your role on that team can change. It can be sometimes it's all the pressure's on you, right? And for those of us that grew up playing sports, doing different kinds of things, like within a game, there would be times when all of the pressure, all of the attention, the entire game might ride on one player. But a lot of times you're in a supporting role. And so you have to understand that it's first and foremost, it's not about me. It's not about any one individual more than it is about the team and about the company. And so understanding that everybody who's here before me has played an integral part of building the company to what it is. And so it really, like if you were to sum it up in one word, it's respect. It's respect for what people have done. It's respect for what people continue to do. And I'm not coming in with thinking that everything needs to change. Like that's not what this was really about. Like this is a great company. It's from the beginning built in a great way. We want to continue that. And so when I came in, it wasn't because we needed to turn this thing around. It was because we needed to keep this thing moving forward. And I think that's where, the years of experience certainly tie into that. You have experience, you have confidence because you've been through things, you've been through hard things, you ultimately believe in yourself because of what you've been able to accomplish. But beyond that, it's more than anything that I personally accomplished in my career. It's that mindset that Jeff talks about, is that come what may, we're going to get through this together as a team. And being part of that team is ultimately, up to me, the individual, to make sure that I'm doing my part on that team. Again, it's not about me. It's about all of us together. What can we do together? All of us are better together than any one of us on our own.
No, and we talk about that a lot here. And I know that Jeff talks about it a lot. The one, what is it? Two minds together make a third more powerful mind, or 1 + 1 = 3 or 5, not 1 + 1 = 0. I mean, team is really at the heart of everything we want to accomplish. I think not just in business, but in life. Your family's a team. You're always trying to work with people. You can't do it as an individual. But I really respected the way you came in the door. and the fact that the team not only accepted you, but started looking to you for guidance. It was really a tremendous to watch. And thank you for sharing that. And I look forward to hearing a lot more from you on the podcast in the future about that philosophy, because you convey it and you live it and you walk it. And I know people see that when they meet with you or they spend time with you. You are a wonderful leader, and we're so glad to have you as part of the team. But I do want to transition a little bit to talk back again about the case, particularly Jeff. You and I and Amber were here from the beginning, but you had the unique experience of having been named in the case. Your journey was very different. You've had this amazing and deserved reputation as a leader in the personal development space, being the author of what I think is the greatest personal development book ever written, The Slight Edge. But also, you've been in this industry for 30 years. You are well known, well respected. You've got a phenomenal name. People want to hear from you all the time. They invite you to speak. Your reputation could not be larger, and suddenly you're named in a lawsuit from the federal government. How did that impact you?
Well, first of all, I want to say I think everybody out there can see why we did win, how we were built to win. Just listen to you, Deb, listen to Amber and Dave, and it goes way beyond that. We have an incredible team. Being named personally was very personal, okay, and a very difficult thing for me to adjust to, because I consider myself a patriot and a believer in the government and believe in everything. But with that said, obviously, they wanted to also, bring Neora down, but they also wanted to bring me down as a person. And so for me, I had to really lean in hard to who I am and remind myself, and Amber spoke to that, who I am and what I stand for. And, what I leaned into really was simply as a person, how I've always led my life, which is very philosophical. I truly believe every great person or every great organization is built on a foundation of philosophy. Philosophy is kind of everything you know, how you hold it, and how it affects what you do. And so you get your philosophy through books you read, listen to a podcast like this, going to events. Probably one of the most important ones is the people you surround yourself, like Deb and Dave and Amber and beyond. And that kind of creates your philosophy. And so from there, that will give you your attitude. If you have a good philosophy, you'll have a good attitude. When you have a good attitude, you'll have good actions, okay? What most people do is they focus on the action. I didn't have any, if I just focused on the FTC, I didn't have any background to allow me to deal with that magnitude of a thing and dealing with the federal government. But I did have a philosophy that formed the way I thought, and it formed my mindset. And I've been leaning into it my whole life, and it worked for me. So I just thought about that. I was one of the youngest airport managers in the United States when I came out of school, college, but I didn't learn anything about airports. My philosophy allowed me to figure out airports. I went on to Texas Instruments, and I went all the way to being a manager in the Intelligent Systems Division. I knew nothing about those systems, but I had a philosophy that allowed me to approach the challenge, that allowed me to win in that process. I went in and built one of the largest solar manufacturing companies, marketing companies in the United States. I knew nothing about solar when I went into that company, but I had a philosophy. I had a way of reading. I had a way of listening, surrounding myself with the right people, building a team, getting the information. And I knew that if I did that, I could figure out the actions. When I figured out the actions, then the appropriate results would happen, and results happen. My lifestyle would change. And so, I built a TV network. I knew nothing about TV, and built a TV network around personal development. But I had a philosophy, said, I can figure this out. Got involved with a legal company, built one of the biggest legal companies in the United States. I knew a lot about law now. And I could go on into this company, Neora. What I'm trying to say, and that was not about me, I'm trying to say, I knew I could figure this out. I knew it was big. I'd never seen anything like it. Nobody, like Dave said, nobody ever been through this. No company's ever. There's not a journey, a lonely journey, a journey rarely traveled. It's a journey never traveled. Okay, but I knew I could figure it out. And so philosophy was everything, and I leaned heavily into that. And leaned into the things I had learned. And I've listened to so many people. I remember one time when Jim Rohn, a great philosopher, he was being interviewed, and he says people come up to him all the time with problems. This was a big problem, okay? He says, what do you say to them? He says, well, tell me the 3 books that you've read about that problem. And he said the answer usually was none. He goes, that's a bad number. Well, that's what we did do. We leaned into this thing. We didn't run from it. We leaned into it. We studied and we learned. And, it was something none of us had ever done. But just as Amber spoke to, we believed in who we were. See, if we didn't believe in who we were, if we didn't believe that we'd built it right, then you really can't have nothing to lean into. But when you believe that, then you were willing to lean into that. We're going to figure this out. Now, obviously, you're in their game. This is what they do all day long, every day. They have the federal government on their side. They have the finances on their side. They have huge legal team. And now you are really the David up against Goliath. The only thing you have is the way you think. The only thing you have is your mindset. The only thing you have is your philosophy. So I leaned into that. And what we've done here at Neora is we surround ourselves with a team like that. And when you have a team like that, then you have what Deb just spoke to, that two minds creates a third more powerful mind. People around me, they always hear me talk about synergy. Synergy is a philosophy. Synergy is where a group of people can go somewhere together they can never go to by themselves. I knew I had a team around me. Dave joined because of what? He says he liked us, but when he sat and talked to Deb, and he sat and talked to Amber, he heard in us something that he resonated with him, which was really our philosophy. We had a positive mindset. We were believers, and we did things with integrity. We did things with character. We did things with purpose. We did things with meaning. And so, although I was not ready to fight the FTC, I had nothing in my life that prepared me for it. I had everything in my life that prepared me for it. And it wasn't that I'd learned how to do that. That was the how. It's never the hows. It's how you do the hows. I had built a person that had learned how to get information, who had learned how to seek, had learned how to have associations that made me bigger and stronger. Because of that, I knew if I just leaned into who I am and what's worked every other time, I can do this. Knowing this is the biggest challenge I ever have by far. I mean, we look down the barrel of the federal government, it's like nothing you've ever seen before, and when you're looking down it, it's scary, okay? But you just start leaning into that. And I'm just saying, philosophy is everything that makes you successful. So I would suggest to you, we're going to be talking about Built to Win. And it's just constantly, you'll learn techniques, okay? And you'll learn concepts, okay? And those are the how. But if the hows aren't working, you got to back up and look at your attitude, your mindset. And if your mindset and attitude is not right, you've got to back up and look at your philosophy. And what I have always tried to do, Deb was a person who was a big editor and launched a Success magazine, biggest magazine about personal development. You find people who live in that world, okay? And you get those people around you. I heard another thing where they were interviewing a person. They said, God, you have a company of a bunch of motivated people. How do you motivate everybody? And the person said, I hire people who are motivated. You need to, when you're putting your team together, find people who are philosophically in alignment with you. But you got to ask yourself, where's your philosophy? What is your philosophy? What are you listening to? Like this podcast, I commend you for that. What are you studying? What are you letting in? What are you blocking? Who are you associated with? Because that is going to become, your philosophy is going to become the philosophy of the people you associate with the most. You are the combined average of the 5 people you associate with the most. I'm very blessed to have Dave around me, have Deb around me, to have Amber around me, but it's bigger than that. There's other people, okay? That allows you to know that you can deal with anything. And that's what I'm excited about. I've actually written a book about philosophy. It's called The Slight Edge, and we'll be talking about that more in the podcast. But what you're going to find as we go on, we will talk about techniques, we'll talk about concepts, we'll talk about principles, but it's always the thing before it is going to be your philosophy. It's going to be your attitude. It's going to be your mindset that makes it work. It's not the hows, it's how you do the hows. And I think it's because of that collectively, we're able to do what, nobody's ever done. David beat Goliath. Okay. So for me, if you can do that, you can do anything.
I love that, Jeff. And one of the things that really struck me from what you said is you didn't start preparing when the crisis hit. We were already prepared. You'd already built yourself into being who you were. I was already who I was. Amber was already who she was. Dave was already who he was. It wasn't hey, now that this crisis has shown up, we need to figure out who we are. We knew who we were. We knew, I don't think we ever wavered on whether or not we were going to take on the challenge. It became, what do we do? Not who are we? And is it, how are we going to approach it? It was really more what are we going to do from a position of knowing that not only we were right, but knowing that we already had the strength, we already had the philosophy, we already had the bonds and the transparency and everything we needed to accomplish anything. And we were just going to apply it to this. And I'm looking forward to, I know our next podcast, our next episode is going to be on the Slight Edge. And I'm really looking forward to you sharing that philosophy with our listeners. But, one of the things that I know is that a lot of people listening to this podcast are going to be, how do you get there? How do you develop a philosophy? How do you get ready to face this kind of challenge? What steps do you take? Should I start taking today to become the person that can win, to be built to win? And so I kind of want to do a little bit of a round robin here. And I'm gonna start with Amber. Amber, what can our listeners do to start their journey on being built to win?
Well, I think it starts with, like Jeff just talked about, working on your own self, your own mindset, and doing that in a way that you're not going and trying to read 10 books today. You're trying to just feed your mind a little bit over time, which is the kind of ethos of the Slight Edge. So, start working on your mindset, start intentionally seeking out good resources, good information that you can continuously be digesting, because that's going to kind of help program your mind to be able to be ready. So being cognizant of what you're putting in your mind, what you're reading, what you're thinking, what you're learning, being cognizant of what helps you be a fulfilled human, because you're going to need to lean into those things. I know for example, for Jeff, one of those things is his physical fitness and working out. Not for me. I could skip like 2 months of working out and be a happy person. He could not, right? Everyone is different, but there's things that that you need to do to fill your cup and work in, like you talked about, time blocking to do those things, to make sure you can't give from an empty cup. And so as a leader, you're always going to have to be giving to your team, giving to the people you're trying to lead, giving. And so it's important that you know yourself and know to what fills your cup up, and you make time for that. And the third is who you surround yourself with. Who are the 5 people that you're around the most? Those are going to be the people that are going to really be key in helping be your support team, your rally team, when things get tougher, just when things are great, like those people, and really evaluating are those the right people that you should be spending the most amount of time with. Talk a lot about that in the Slight Edge. For some people, it's not about cutting people out, but there's some people you're spending 3 hours a week with maybe you need to spend 30 minutes, and some people are spending 30 minutes, you probably should be spending 3 hours, because that is going to be a defining moment. So what are you putting in your mind? What are you doing to fill your cup? And are you surrounded by the right people? And if you can work towards those things, it's not going to be an overnight thing. You're setting yourself up to win.
That really speaks to me, because Live Happy, which is livehappy.com and Live Happy Now podcast. If you're not checking out those two things, I'm going to ask you to do that. But there's a lot of information when you start looking at happiness, which is about relationships, and that your relationships and the nature of relationships you have with people have the most significant impact on whether you feel good about your life, whether you feel like you're in the right place, and surrounding yourself with the right people. And then another element of happiness that I always find really important is exactly what you said, Amber. Pay attention to what you're putting in your brain. If what you're putting in your brain all day is true crime podcasts and watching the evening news, you're probably not developing a life philosophy that is going to be as healthy as if you're spending time listening to things that are idea related, or are going to help you get through the next challenge, or are just things that you believe in and touch you in a way that make you think about, the important things in life. So what you're putting in your brain, taking some time to put healthy things in your brain, things that drive thought, drive who you want to be, and then also paying attention to who you're spending time with. I think there's a statistic out there that says for every one negative interaction, you need 6 to 10 positive interactions to overcome that negative interaction. Just if you pay attention to who you're spending your time with, are they filling you up or are they dragging you down? And how do you change the nature of those relationships? I think that is a key to preparing yourself to be built to win. Dave, same question. What would you tell our listeners to do to begin their journey to becoming built to win?
I could go on and on and on, and not that I feel like I'm the expert on this, but I think that we started this podcast because we had some of these experiences. But I think for me, it's really changing your mindset as it pertains to failure and what you perceive as a setback. And I know for me personally, that was a big thing in my life. And, I love what Amber said about working out. I love about surrounding yourself with the right people, with the right mind frame. All of those are critically important. But I think for me personally, what really shifted in my experience in my career was when I realized that you don't create strong leadership by smooth waters, right? There's a saying, and I'll butcher it, but it's about, great sailors aren't made on smooth waters. And I think that's true of business. I think it's true in life. I think that, unfortunately, some of our greatest strengths and some of our biggest successes, they come through some of the toughest times. And so if you can change your mindset around what it means to be tried and tested, then I think that that's when you really see that growth personally.
Yeah, I think people look at failure sometimes as a negative, but we all fail forward, and learning how to do that and how to learn. We wouldn't be here. No one on this podcast would be here. And great leaders are not built by getting it right 100% of the time. Learning how to frame your failures to grow from them. I agree. It's something that can be learned. And I think investing the time and energy and finding, if that's a struggle you have, finding information around that would be a great first step for someone to start their journey to being built to win. Jeff, I know you have so much on this topic. You know so much from your own life experience, but also from all of the great leaders and thought leaders that you've interacted with over your lifetime. But if someone is starting their Built to Win journey right now, what is the one thing they can do to have the most success on that journey besides reading The Slight Edge?
Well, I hope when you're listening to us, you'll probably think, "Gosh, I wish I had these people on my team," and I'm blessed to have those. And believe me, our team is bigger than this, and we're attracting like-minded people. Okay, and so when you have a team like this, you pretty much, because you hold each other together, because there's going to be ups and downs this whole thing, but as long as you're together, you can conquer anything, especially if you attract people, like-minded people. And so for me, it's creating that environment. And Deb, I'm really happy that you brought up the Live Happy. Live Happy is our sister company. It's owned by Neora. Deb is the CEO of it. We're all participating in it. And it's our belief that happiness is something that allows you to have better health and finances relationship. And we teach that in our podcast and the magazine and everything we do. But that's an example of, we don't just say it, we invest in it. Okay. This is part of who we are. So ask yourself, is the team around you, who is that team? And you got to become very conscious of it. Amber spoke to 3 hours, 30 minutes or 3 hours, who you spend time with. I think your team is important. You don't start putting together the team to go through the battle when the battle shows up. The team should already be with you, because that same team is going to allow you win the battles. The same team is going to allow you build your dreams, build your business, build your family, build your health, whatever it might be. And so I think if you're hearing anything from every one of us, laws of association is very important. Okay. But, back to, we all keep talking about philosophy. I'm going to give you some simple examples. Here's a simple example. Successful people do what unsuccessful people are not willing to do. Ask yourself, what are the thoughts that are in your head that allow you to go through things that other people might not be willing to go through or successfully go through? See, that thought's in my head all the time. I'm always, all the time, ask myself, am I doing things that unsuccessful people are not willing to do? Here's another philosophy. Quit wanting what you don't want. That sounds crazy, but if you want everything to be perfect, it will never be perfect. Okay. You've got to understand there's going to be downs. There's going to be times when people don't agree with you. There's going to be times when you think, am I crazy? Okay. That comes with the territory. It gets lonely as you move into this space sometimes. Okay. But see, those are philosophies. I have a bunch of one-liner philosophies in my head. Where did I learn those? Reading, listening to podcasts, going to events, people I associate with. People know me, know I always have a white pad with me. You might do it. Amber laughs at me because she does this in her phone. Okay. But I'm old time and I pull it out and I'm always writing down things that hit my head because I don't trust my memory. I'm writing down the challenges. Okay. When the FTC was going on, I was constantly writing down things that, okay, what about this? This triggered me in a conversation. I thought of something. I need to write this down. I could take it back to my team of like-minded people, philosophically in alignment with me, and we could go. Okay. Or I hear from somebody else who's had success in life and they say something. I go, wow. And I write that down. But it means it's a journey. It's an ever-ending journey of sharpening your axe, sharpening your axe. It's that old saying of, I don't remember who says it, but if I had 6 hours to chop down a tree, I spent 4 hours sharpening my axe, 2 hours chopping down the tree. See, that's chopping down the tree is the how. It's not the hows. It's how you do the hows. How you do the hows is sharpening your axe. Sharpening your axe, a big part of it is your laws of association. So when you get that, what's so great about it is this is something you can do. It's liberating. It's not like saying, I got to learn physics. That's not liberating to me, okay? But, working on my philosophy, working on my attitude mindset, that's something I can do, okay? That's something I can do. Building a team of scientists, that's kind of tough. But building a team, with great philosophies, we'll go find the scientists we need, okay? Because we have the right attitude in doing that. And so I think you build that yourself, and it starts with you. You're not going to attract positive people if you're not positive. You're not going to attract willing people. You're not willing. You're not going to attract people willing to go through fire with you unless you are that person's willing to go through fire. So it actually starts by looking in the mirror, who you are, realizing you can do this. Okay, maybe you haven't done it yet, but you can. Okay. And by becoming that person, you'll start attracting those people. You'll start weeding your garden, getting rid of the ones who are not in alignment with that, allowing those ones that aren't in alignment with it. Stop allowing the information in is not in alignment with it. Bring in the information is in alignment with it. And all of a sudden you're built to win, regardless of what shows up. And trust me, something else will show up. That's part of the process, just comes with the journey. That's just the way it is.
Thanks, Jeff. Every time I hear you talk about this and your life philosophy, it triggers thoughts in myself about, oh yeah. But it's such a clear vision for who you are. I know that it inspires all of us. And I think that our most important podcast, if you only ever listen to one episode of the Built to Win podcast, it's going to be the next episode where Jeff shares the Slide Edge philosophy. So make sure you come back and listen to that one. I also want to share with our listeners that we aren't going to spend every podcast talking about the FTC case. In fact, we're just using this as an example to jump off and to really share our life experiences, our knowledge, our philosophies, some examples of battles we've been through and lived through, some failures we've had. You're going to get all of that over the next several podcasts. I shouldn't end on failures. Some wins we have as well. I think you're going to be able to share, learn a lot from just listening to us talk about our experiences. But because it's kind of our last podcast to truly just talk about the FTC case, I want to ask everybody, how did this experience change you? What did you learn specifically from this experience? Because we all learn from everything, our victories and our failures. Let me start with Dave. Dave, what did you learn from this experience?
Well, I think that you can't go into any experience, no matter how challenging, without some belief that you're going to come out the other side, because no matter what, you're going to come out the other side. It may not be the way you anticipated, but there is always life after a challenge, no matter how significant that challenge is.
For me, I'm going to interject mine right now. For me, it really is the importance of surrounding yourself with the right people. I've been on a lot of teams in my life, but having the confidence of working with Jeff and Amber and our legal team and everyone that was engaged in this activity, truly their unified belief that we were doing the right thing carried me through some tough spots. It was really, you're not always surrounded by the right team, and we lost some team members along the way, but we gained some better ones. And they were better not because they're better people, but because they're better suited to our team. They were engaged. They believed in what we were doing. That just the personal commitment that never wavered. And just learning that when you have the right team, you can do almost anything. I think we all talk about that, but having experienced that, it really solidified that in me. And I spend more time more time and focus on who we're adding to the team. I'd rather add no one than add the wrong person. And really having that philosophy understood in a way that I hadn't understood it through life experience before is something I really got out of this entire experience. Amber, I'm going to go to you next. What changed you, or what did you really learn from this experience?
So I learned so many things throughout this experience, lots of, kind of blessings in disguise. And to wrap up my 11/11 story, where I was seeing that throughout the day, the ruling actually came through in our email at 11/11. And so I have those 3 things saved. And that was kind of the completion of the God winks. And I think that ties to my first learning is I really, when you go through something challenging, I think it's an opportunity to even deepen your faith. And I felt in that moment when I saw the ruling come through at 11/11, it's, I just felt the presence of that. I've never walked this alone. And I leaned on that a lot. And that this fight wasn't something I was in by myself. And I think that's, true for anything that you go through. The next was really the blessing of knowing who your true supporters are. One of the situations like this, it feels scary. Like I talked about at the beginning, I was scared to, go through this publicly, but it allowed me to know who I call it my ride or dies. So the friends that are ride or die that are going to be there for me no matter what, the people on my team, the executives, like you said, we had some executives, some team members left, but the right people stayed, the right people came. And that created a bond that's pretty unbreakable. When we all came together, both in the home office and the field team, there is an unbreakable bond. And I truly, consider them part of my ride or die crew. And it's a blessing to know that. I would rather know that, so if you're having to curate what people know about your life and what they think, then they're not really your ride or dies. And, your true supporters are going to show up for you no matter what. Trust in that. And the rest kind of don't matter. And so you really get to learn that firsthand going through that. And then the last thing is this really increased what I call my blink factor. And what I mean by blink factor is what makes you blink as a leader. So, before it could be, we're going to be out of product for 2 weeks. And that would make me blink like, oh, what are we going to do? And get like, oh gosh, panicked. Like now my blink factor is so high as a leader because of what we walked through that there's virtually nothing that can really stop me from, keep moving forward, not get panicked, not start spinning, and, proving to yourself that you can do much harder things than you think. And that's something that I got to teach my girls through this. I constantly tell them, you can do hard things. When they say, Mom, hard, I say, great, you can do hard things. You were born to do hard things. And I got to, really know that deeply about myself, that I'm capable of doing much harder things than I ever thought I was.
I love that. Jeff, how has this experience changed you? What did you learn from this experience?
Talk about leaning into things. I leaned into faith more than I ever had. And this group had done the same thing. And I think it was a big part of it. And, and faith for everybody's different. Okay. Where you lean into, but you got to believe. Okay. And so that was big. And that was a blessing. That's a real blessing that came out of it. Learn, I already knew. Okay. But do the right thing. If we had not done the right thing all along, then the decision to fight and the decision to win and the decision to, galvanize would have been difficult. But I knew we'd done the right thing. So, integrity and character is very important. Okay, very important. But I think the thing, I learned more that what we're doing is the right thing to do, and the people you associate with is the most important thing you do. And I think you can see that here. I wish you could hear from the next 10 people in the company, because what you'd see, they are like-minded. Okay, when we have a team like that, you can about do anything. So for me, it made my vision get bigger, made my belief get bigger, and it made me believe in myself more, and realizing the principles that I had been living on were actually very foundational, and that's why we want to share these type of things with people like you. And so I guess what I learned more than anything else, I really am built to win. Okay, and I believe everybody has that in them. I really do. I've always believed that God gives you. It doesn't sometimes look like it, but it's there. Okay, and that's what this is all about. Is that every person out there has within them something's going to allow them to be a successful person going forward, regardless of the circumstances. And so I'm just a believer now. I've always been a believer. I'm just more of who I always was. I've always believed that things can be accomplished. I'm always going forward. You don't ever see me back up. And I just, what I think coming out of this thing, I have is freedom to know that everything that I always believed in worked. Okay. And it worked at probably the highest and most difficult level you could possibly ever go through. So I have a lot of gratitude in me right now.
Well, I am so grateful to be part of this team and to have been on this journey with all of you. It has really galvanized us as a group. I really think we can do anything. And we're gonna do great things as a team. And it's not just us on the podcast, as you said. It's a whole team of people, really thousands of people out there that we lean on and that we rely on. And it's been a tremendous journey. And I thank everyone for this episode, sharing about the journey, about our personal journeys along the way. And I want to remind all of our listeners, check out the next episode. If you don't know anything about the Slight Edge, or if you have it on your bookshelf and you mean to read it, or maybe you have it in your audiobook file and you haven't listened to it, or maybe you've read it 5 times, check out the next episode. It really is foundational for a life philosophy. The way I describe the Slight Edge is it's the blueprint to win at anything. So having that foundation to be built to win is critical. And I look forward to that episode. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
If you enjoyed this episode of Built to Win, you don't want to miss what's coming next. You've heard us talk about the Slight Edge, and in the next episode, you'll hear Neora founder Jeff Olson explain the principles behind the book, what led him to write it, and how we all can apply those principles every day. To make sure you don't miss a minute of Built to Win, be sure and hit subscribe wherever you download your favorite podcast. And while you're there, please be sure to leave a rating and review to let others know what you think.